Good evening and welcome to Alan's Italy. It's been about 3 weeks since I've last been here with the snowstorm we had up here and some. I attended a gallery opening last week, so I was not available. But over the past 3 weeks, I have developed a bunch of new stuff that I'm going to be using over the next few months, so it was productive. I'm glad to be back. And this past last week, I did do another forum, a library forum in Woodstock, which was very, very good. So, but that's it for the library forums for now. But I thought I would do a library forum actually on the television show, which would go on YouTube and be a permanent part of my library of shows. So that would be pretty good. I got to tell you, there's a little added challenge tonight. The community center next door is about as noisy as I've ever heard it. It's worse than the flamenco dancer, I believe, because there's really a lot of stuff going on. I don't know what's happening there, but I'll do the best I can. I have a bunch of things to discuss, so I'd like to begin immediately. First of all, tonight's show is going to be a show on Umbrian hill towns. And Umbria is an area of Italy which is in close proximity to Tuscany. It's just to the south and to the east of Tuscany. We'll go back to the map a little later to take a look at what that looks like. But I have a few things to discuss first. I've been doing a lot of reading on what's going on in Italy, and there's a lot going on in Italy. And one of the things that I was able to, what I received in the mail was this newspaper. I'll just hold it up. It's a newspaper that I get from my friend Luca, which is, it's not a newspaper for for Florentines. It's more of a newspaper for tourists, I believe, because it is in English and it does talk about a lot of things that are going on in Florence. So this was very helpful. Yeah, there's like so much going on. So I took a couple of items out of there. And let's, go through a few of them. First of all, the news from the Vatican, of course, is that Pope Benedict XVI is resigning. And that's the first pope to resign since Pope Gregory XII did so in 1415. So almost 600 years since the last resignation of a pope. That's the best image I could get of Pope Gregory XII. I looked at all the pictures they had of him, and, that's the best I could find. And anyway, so that doesn't happen that often. But, we're going to go through the experience of the election of a pope, which will begin on March 15th. And, of course, it'll take place in the Sistine Chapel, where I've taken you a couple of times. And, they'll take ballots, and when the ballots when the smoke comes out black, it'll mean that they haven't selected a pope as yet, and they get the black smoke, as you know, from mixing straw with the ballots. And when the smoke comes out of the chimney that's white, that'll mean that a new pope has been selected. So that's what's going on at the Vatican. Florence is marking the 450th anniversary of the death of Michelangelo, which occurred on February 18th, 1564. He died at the age of 89, which in those times was absolutely extraordinary. And Florence will commemorate the celebration of that event with exhibitions and conferences during the next couple of years. So that's what's going on with Michelangelo. There was an article in the newspaper I just showed you about the infamous ZTL. This is a device that I've spoken about a couple of times. People who are not local Florentines and who do not have special permits are not permitted to drive in the city center. And that area is called the Zona Traffico Limitato. And you are not allowed to travel, and if you do travel, that camera up on the top there takes your license number picture, sends it to your rental car agency, and you get a summons in the mail. And there was a whole article about it, that there are 10 million visitors to Florence, a city of only 370,000 people, and the city of Florence actually collects, and I was astounded when I read this, and I had to look this up, but 50 million euros are collected from summonses. Now, I received a summons myself, not from the city of Florence. I received it from the city of Gallarata, which is a town right near the big city of Milan, as I was headed towards the Milan-Malpensa airport. And, I was there in the early morning hours, and I had no idea that they had this, and I wasn't really paying attention. And when I got home, there was a summons in the mail. And, it's like a big summons. It's like $100, $150, maybe $200. And you collect that from a number of people, and you make plenty of money. So there was a whole article that this is very unfair to tourists. And I of course, certainly agree with that. Then we have an eruption. Mount Etna in the southeasternmost portion of Sicily erupted 3 days ago on February 19th, 2013. Now, when I saw that, and that's what it looked like, it's just amazing. But when I saw that, I said, gee, a volcano erupts and I wouldn't say it's a densely populated area, but there are quite a few towns around it, namely Taormina, the famous Sicilian seaside resort on the very eastern shore of Sicily. There was no report of any damage or anything like that, either to a big town like that or to the little towns around it. The town of Rondazzo was not far from there as well, but there was no information whatsoever about any damage or any injuries. So, people were just marveling at the fact that it was so beautiful to see. So I assume that things are pretty good. Okay. So that takes care of the news, and I'm going to go through the newspaper again next week, and there's a few other things I'd like to bring up as well. So I'm done with my library forums for now. I've done Saugerties and Kingston and Woodstock in that order over the past month and a half, and as they progressed, they got better and better and more enjoyable with more and more people attending. Altogether, about between 40 and 45 people, as well as I could count, attended the 3 forums, and it was really fun. And I'm going to do an actual forum as a TV show that will be, a permanent record of all of the shows that I've done. It'll be on YouTube. And people who were unable to get there, and a number of people apologized and said they couldn't get there, so it'll be on YouTube for them to see. However, I do have other things planned for the upcoming months. The number one thing is going to occur starting on March 20th. That'll be the New Paltz Lifetime Learning Institute, which will begin on March 20th and run for 8 sessions. So this is even bigger than the Saugerties LifeSpring program, which was 6 sessions. This will be 8 sessions, and it'll be pretty much what I did in Saugerties, except that rather than 6, I've planned for 8 sessions, which is really much better because, I left out a lot of major things when I did the Saugerties program. But there could still be space left in the New Paltz, although I believe that they stopped taking applications as of March 1st. And I capped the class. I didn't cap the Saugerties program when I did that in the fall, and there were 35 people, which I thought was too much. So I told them to cap it at 20 or 25. I don't remember what. So maybe there's still space. But I'm also returning to the LifeSpring Saugerties program in the fall, and that's going to be interesting because I'm also planning on returning to mathematics teaching in the college next fall. So I'll be doing the college teaching Tuesday, Thursday, and hopefully, if I have any energy left, I'll be doing the LifeSpring Saugerties program on Wednesdays. So, and that'll be part 2 of what I began to do last fall, and that I've developed already. Part of it, I don't have the whole thing developed. I thought I'd do work over the summer. But, backed by popular demand, the people that went to that forum in Saugerties liked it very much and asked that I continue doing, some more work. So I said, sure, I'd be happy to do it. Even though I'm going to be busy doing other things, that should be fun. So those are the things that are happening. Oh, one other thing, one last thing. Usually when I make a mistake on a show, I don't go back to it. At the very beginning, when I first started doing this in 2011, I did. I used to go back, the week after, and I'd say, here are some mistakes I made. And then I decided not to do that because most people, really weren't interested as I spoke to them. However, this really bothered me because I was going through the 4 bridges over the Grand Canal in Venice, the Calatrava, the Scalzi, the Rialto, and the Accademia. I showed this graphic, and it showed when the bridges were built. And then I showed you an example of the Calatrava Bridge, which is the bridge that goes from the train station, which is on the left, to the Piazzale Roma, which is where the parking area and all the buses are located. And then I spoke about the Scalzi Bridge, which runs from just south of the train station across the Grand Canal to the Church of Santa Maria della Scalzi, and that's where it gets its name. And then I went to this bridge, which is the most famous bridge in Venice, and arguably one of the most famous bridges in the world. And I spoke about it for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I referred to it as the Accademia Bridge. I have no idea why, because it doesn't look like it, the Accademia Bridge, but it's just something I said. So I insisted, that I go back and do it again. First of all, that's a stunning picture. That's like the bluest sky I've ever seen. But the Rialto Bridge is a beautiful bridge, and I just wanted people to know that the 3rd bridge on the Grand Canal heading south, and that bridge is unmistakable as the Rialto Bridge. This is the Accademia Bridge. You can see there's no resemblance whatsoever. And this is the last bridge on the Grand Canal before you actually enter the Venetian Lagoon. So that takes care of that. And now we're ready to begin. And this is the only map I could find which actually outlined all of the regions of Italy. And this is the one that I used when I spoke about Tuscany. You see right in the middle there in green by the Italian name of Toscana. And you could see that right just to the right of it and slightly below is the region known as Umbria. And that's what we're going to be focusing on this evening. And when I first started to think about Umbria, it was 2006, and Laura and I did Laura and I did more exploration of Umbria than we did of Tuscany at the time. I'm not sure exactly why, but we did explore many of the hill towns in Umbria, and that's what we're going to focus on tonight. In my book, I indicate in a paragraph that I spoke to my friend Luca, who's a native Florentine and lived in Tuscany his whole life, what he thinks the difference is between Tuscany and Umbria. And he indicated that to him there's no difference. The dialect is different, and usually Florentines can tell, as well as Umbrians, somebody from Tuscany and somebody from Umbria based on how they speak. Other than that, Lucas said, Umbria is one of the few, if not the only, landlocked region. If you look at the map, you could see that every other region of Italy has an outlet on either the Adriatic Sea to the right or the Mediterranean Sea to the left. Now, I was looking at Lombardia, which is north, up to the north there, north of Emilia-Romagna, which really doesn't have, a sea outlet to it, but it does have the lakes, Lake Como and Lake Maggiore. And then you see up there Trentino and Alto Adige, which also don't appear to have an outlet. But other than that, you could see that Umbria is completely landlocked. And we're going to focus on that. But we're not going to focus on every hill town in Umbria. First of all, it would take very long, but I'm only going to focus on the ones that I personally have experience with. So those are the ones right there. Orvieto, Citta della Pieve, Lake Trasimeno, Perugia, Assisi, Spello and Todi. Excuse me, I've had a cold recently. There's actually another town that Laura and I spent about a half hour in, which was the town of Spoleto, which I'm not going to focus on because we have nothing really on that. So I've decided to leave that out, but I decided to include Urbino, which is not located in Umbria, but in an area known as Marche. So we'll cover that as well. And this is a close-up on Umbria, and you could see that it's small in comparison to Tuscany over there on the left side, and Lazio to the south. We've spent time in Lazio. I did Civita di Bannoreggio, and we spoke about Lake Bolsena and where Rick and Sharon live in Roccavecce, and we've spent time in Tuscany. But the only time we've spent on this show in Umbria was in the town of Orvieto, which we did 2 shows on. Other than that, we did nothing. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with Orvieto, a little bit on that, and then head up here and come around like this and go all over Umbria, and then we'll do Urbino later, which is actually up here in this region to the north. So we'll be looking at that. And we're going to start with Orvieto. And remember, this is what it looked like. It's a beautiful hill town right on the border. It's in a perfect spot. And we've stayed there a couple of times, and it's in the perfect location where Umbria, Tuscany, and Lazio come together in kind of like, a corner. And, from Orvieto as a base, you could certainly explore Umbria and Tuscany and Lazio extremely well, as we have done over the years and will probably continue to in the years to come. And this is Civita di Bannoreggio, and you may say, why is he going back to there? And the reason is because I would like to speak about my friend who lives in Orvieto. His name is Franco Sala, as you may remember, and his restaurant is right up those stairs in the middle there. And this is the moment, almost the moment, where Franco and I met. And this was in his restaurant in the year 2003. And as we're in the process of really getting to know each other, Lydia took this picture of Franco putting his arm on my shoulder and me looking up admiringly at him, and we became friends at this moment. And there's no better way to begin Orvieto than to have Franco give us an introduction to the town of Orvieto. And that's going to be our first video of the evening. So, Ellen, when you're ready. Yes, so you're going to tell us the story.
Well, it's not a story, that is a true thing. I mean, this was the main street to enter in Orvieto since Orvieto was founded 2,700, 2,800 years ago. And to enter in Orvieto, you have 3 doors. You have the main doors. The first door is that one.
Right.
If the enemy, they cannot climb this kind of rock,
I wouldn't want to do this.
If they can enter in the first door, they found another second door here, and if they open the second door, there is a third door.
Right.
You understand?
Yes.
Is this the reason why Orvieto he never surrendered to the enemy? Because inside they have pigeon, they have cow, they have goats, they have everything, and the only problem was the water. But they resolved the problem, the water problem, with the St. Patrick well.
Right.
It's mean that they escaped it underground with the St. Patrick well, they found the water, and they have also water in town. So the enemy, they never entered in town.
In other words,
they never surrendered to the enemy.
The Etruscans were never defeated by the Romans? Like, cities fell to the Romans, Chiusi,
Yeah,
Volterra.
all.
Orvieto never fell to the Romans.
They fell to the Romans.
Eventually?
But he's the only one. I mean, the Etruscan, they fell down to the Romans in all the area. You understand?
Here too?
Here too. in Orvieto too.
The Romans were something.
Yeah, they destroy everything.
Okay.
I mean,
this
they
is-
destroy all the culture, that he was a grandfather, that
I
he was
know.
Etruscan, you
I
understand?
know. They also copied a lot of
Yeah,
it. They
and
also
this-
copied a lot
yeah.
of it, so we know that.
Even in Civita is the same thing. Civita was Etruscan too. But by the year, when the Romans coming, the Romans entering Civita, they destroy all the Etruscan culture, and they introduce his own culture. That he wasn't his own culture, but he was a bad copy of Greek culture.
Right.
You
I've
understand?
noticed that. I've noticed a lot of the vases have a lot of the Etruscan vases look like Greek vases.
Yeah, don't forget that the Etruscan, 2005, 3,000 years ago, they interchanged the merchandise between Italy Etruscan area, with the Egypt.
Right.
In fact, in Civita, the poles that you found on the main street, on the main square, there is 4 poles on the main square. The research, they realized that this stone is not Italian, but it's come from Egypt. And it was for a temple. I don't know which kind of
Right.
temple was, but it was for a temple that he was
Okay.
give as a gift to the Etruscan people.
Okay.
that-
We got to get going because we got to.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was your introduction to Orvieto, and as you know, as Franco indicated, Orvieto, as well as many towns in Umbria, were 3,000 years old, and even before they were Etruscan. The Etruscans came to the region of Umbria only between the 7th and 9th century BC. They were then conquered by the Romans in the 5th century BC, and it progressed from there. I have a few notes here that I'd like to indicate. Then, of course, they were conquered by the Ostrogoths, and the Byzantines. Umbria is known for 3 products, mainly tobacco, olive oil, and wine. Umbria has 8.5% of the Italian population, and it's actually the administrative divisions of Umbria are either Perugia to the north and Terni to the south. And Perugia is really the capital of the region, and we'll be talking about Perugia in a little while. But first, a little discussion of Orvieto. Now, this is the well-known necropolis. This is one of the most famous necropoli in all of Italy, and I'd like you to see this. It's a very short video of what a necropolis looks like today, and it's only a minute long, so here we go again. Continuing the necropolis, this is what it looks like from slightly above. These are the streets of the City of the Dead. And this is at the foot of Orvieto. I'm going to show you the side of the hill. This is what Orvieto looks like from looking at it at the top. So this necropolis is actually at the foot of Orvieto, which I believe is about 1,000 feet up, but I'm not totally sure. And it's not at the foot. We're actually, slightly below the crest, but we're actually very high up at this point. Behind me, you can see how high up we are. This is a burial ground, and this is where the ancient Etruscans were buried. They were buried in those little houses, and they were created as they lived. In life they lived in little dwellings with streets and so on, and in death they lived, pretty much the same. They died. They weren't alive, of course, in similar type setups, and they called them necropoli, the cities of the dead. And this is what Orvieto looks like. These are some of the streets. This is one of the most beautiful. This is my favorite hill town in this. Actually, It's hard to say because I love Civita di Banreggio, but I also love Orvieto. If I had a choice of staying in one of these two places, I would stay in Orvieto, my favorite town. You know, there's more restaurants, there's more to do. But this is what it looks like walking around Orvieto, as you might remember from the show we did several months ago. This is the magnificent cathedral, one of the most beautiful cathedrals in all of Italy. Beautiful streets and stairways, very interesting. This is the main piazza, right across from the cathedral. And this is to the side of the cathedral. There's a lovely restaurant out there. And this is what one of the streets looked like. This is one of my favorite streets in all of Orvieto, you know, with the arches and the flowers. It's just a beautiful town. Okay, now, here's what happened. Laura and I visited Orvieto in the year 2006, and we decided that we would like to visit the town of Todi, which was only about 45 minutes to the east of Orvieto. So you're probably wondering, why is he showing Citta della Pieve when he's going to talk about Todi? Well, here's the story. We left Orvieto. You could see Orvieto at the very bottom of the screen there, right above where it says Bolsena, you know, and that Bolsena is referring to Lake Bolsena, which is that blue spot over there at the very bottom on the left side. We left Orvieto with instructions from the hotel to go directly east to the town of Todi. And you could see that it looks pretty easy. But, you know, when you get into a car and you get onto a road in Italy, it becomes unbelievably difficult to find your way anywhere. Well, I took a wrong turn and I wound up on the autostrada. So I'm going up the autostrada, and, you know, the problem is, you know, what do you do now? Do you get off the autostrada and wind your way back to Todi, which I really was unsure of at this point, or do you just continue going to our next destination, which would have been Perugia? You see Perugia up there right in the center, almost in the center of the picture, with a circle around it. So we decided to do that, but we decided to not get out too far up. We could have gotten out further along A1, which is the autostrada. We decided to get out at the first possible exit. We did so, and we began riding through some really, really magnificent countryside. And, you know, this is what we were looking at on our way north to wind up in Perugia. And in the distance, we saw this little town, and it looked very intriguing. So we kept getting closer and closer, and the closer and closer we got, the more we began to realize that this is a very extraordinary place to, you know, run into for about a half hour, and, you know, maybe get a cappuccino and see the town. And we kept getting closer and closer, and we're taking these are not digital photographs. These are regular photographs that we scanned into the computer, and we went to this really beautiful hill town. And, you know, we got into the town, and it was beautiful. Let me make this larger. I took this off the internet because we just didn't take that many pictures in this town. But this is what the town looks like. It was, you know, very narrow streets, beautiful buildings. Again, let me make that larger. Some very beautiful buildings. Okay, so that is the town of Citta della Pieve. And let me finish the story. When I get to Florence, you know, we thought we discovered, you know, it was Columbus discovering America. So we got into Florence, and I grabbed Luca, and I pulled him aside, and I said, you know, we found this amazing town, and you might be interested in going there someday, and I'll tell you where it's located. But the name of the town, and I whispered to him, was Citta della Pieve. And he said, oh yeah, I have cousins who live there. And I went, do? You've heard of it? He said, of course I've heard of it. It's a big town in Umbria. In fact, I know a great restaurant there. I'm going to give you the name. He writes down the name of this restaurant, and I'm looking at Laura and going, we thought we discovered this completely out of the way place, and yet it is a place that, you know, people know of. So I thought that was very interesting. And then we decided that we were going to take a look at this beautiful lake. This is Lake Trasimeno, and you know it's known in Italian history because there was a famous battle that was fought on its shores between the Romans and somebody else. I don't even remember. I don't know the details really, but it's a beautiful lake, and I always wanted to see it. And you could see that it's a beautiful lake, so we decided to go over there. But first, we decided this was a previous trip. We decided to go to Cortona, and Cortona is north of Lake Trasimeno, and stay in this hotel, a really nice hotel that supposedly had a magnificent view of the lake. Well, you could see in the background that it's completely fogged in, so you cannot see anything because it's completely foggy. And the next morning when we woke up, Laura snapped this unbelievable picture. This is sunrise on Lake Trasimeno, but unfortunately you can't see the lake. All you could see is the clouds and the fog above the lake, but that's a beautiful picture. And when I looked at that, I said, I don't know. I think that unless that fog lifts and that the clouds, separate a little bit, we're not going to be able to see the lake. Sure enough, we arrived at the lake, and this is what we saw. We did not see the lake at all. There was no way we could see this lake, and that's all we saw. But Laura did snap some pretty amazing pictures of what trees look like in a dense fog. And this is one of my favorite pictures of all the pictures that Laura has ever taken. It's a picture, as you can see, it's a tree, and right behind that tree, I want you to know, is the lake. And we never got to see it. I walked right behind that tree, right up to the bank of the lake, and I could see nothing. I mean, I could not see 10 feet in front of me. But, we kept going, and we wind up in Perugia. Now, Perugia is the capital of Umbria. It's a very big city with 160,000 people. It's known because it was one of the 12 Etruscan cities of the Etruscan Confederation. But, it has the University of Perugia with 134,000 students, I want you to know, which is, a pretty large university. 5,000 of whom are foreign students. It's known also because it has a jazz festival once a year. And, well-known people have lived there. Pietro Vannucci, Raphael Pinturicchio, and as a matter of fact, Perugina. Perugina actually was born in Citta della Pieve. That was one of the first things Luca had said to me. He said, not only do I know of Citta della Pieve, but Perugina, the very famous 15th century artist, was born there. And Perugia is also known because they make chocolate kisses. You know those chocolate kisses? They come from Perugia. Anyway, Perugia's a very beautiful city, as you could see what that looks like. And this is a view from one of the higher points. It's it's up on a hilltop. Every town that we visited in Umbria, except for the town of Castiglione del Lago, which was the town right on Lake Trasimeno that we actually pulled into, are all hill towns, and they're all up and down. And you can see that this town is really beautiful. And this is the main piazza of Perugia. That's the town hall, and that's a very famous building. And this is the big hangout in Perugia, and you see a lot of college students here in season. When they're going to school, and there are beautiful churches, and you could see the mountains behind it. And if you look even further towards the north, you could even see some snow-capped mountains. And this picture was snapped probably in April, because I think we were there during Easter vacation in mid-April or early April, and you could see that there's still snow in the mountains. And this is a beautiful picture taken from probably our room at the hotel in Perugia. And let me see if I can remember the name. It was the Hotel Fortuna, and it was like very close to the main square. Very nice hotel. And you can see that this is a really pretty city with some beautiful views, spectacular views. Okay, now if you head north from Perugia, you come to the town of Gubbio. And I always wanted to go to Gubbio. In fact, we had plans during this particular trip to actually stay overnight, and then we canceled it when we decided to go elsewhere. But this is what Gubbio looks like. It's a very, very pretty city. And when we pulled into the parking lot at Gubbio, Laura noticed that across the road were ancient Roman ruins. And this is the ruins of a theater in Gubbio. And I said, gee, I had forgotten that Gubbio is known as was being an ancient Roman city. And there are ancient Roman ruins all over, very, very interesting. And we went across the road and we snapped, in fact, Laura snapped these pictures. This is what the stadium looks like. It's a theater, it's not an amphitheater, and it's not, a hippodrome. It's a theater where shows were produced. So this is where the people sat, and this is where the stage was over here. So it was actually a theater where plays were produced. And that's a picture of Laura amid the ruins of the Roman ruins in Gubbio. An interesting thing occurred here. Laura apparently put her glasses down for a minute, and when we were walking back across the road, she realized she'd lost them. So we went back to this spot, and there they were, lying right at where she had been standing. But this is very interesting, and it's a beautiful area. There's very spectacular views all around the town. And that's what it looks like, in the surrounding area. That's a picture of me in 2006. I look a lot younger, I think, surrounded by beautiful trees and buildings. And some of the streets are very, very narrow and very, very interesting. A charming town. Definitely one of the nicest towns. Some beautiful brick. Laura loves to take these wall pictures because they're all different and all very interesting. And then we went to Assisi, which is probably the most famous town in Umbria. And Assisi, of course, is known as being the birthplace of St. Francis. And let's see, what do I have on that? I don't have much. Probably because I already know that the town is named after St. Francis, who worked, trying to assist poor people. Oh, here it is. St. Francis lived from 1181 to 1226. He was this particular town is considered a World Heritage Site, and the basilica, which was built in 1253 after he had died and become a saint, is one of the most beautiful cathedrals in all of Italy. The cathedral was damaged in the earthquake of 1997. But, this is the town that St. Francis called his own. And you could see that from a distance, it's a very, very beautiful town. And I remember, Laura looked at this picture a couple of days ago as we were going through it and said, did I snap that? And I said, yes, it's a beautiful picture. And, this is a wall that we're going to see from the opposite side. This is the famous Church of San Francesco, which we'll see in a few minutes. And that's what Assisi looks like from a distance. And this is what it looks like when you come into the town and you're walking up the hill to get to the church, and that's what it looks like in the distance. So it's a beautiful countryside with snow-capped mountains. And this is the famous Basilica of in Italy it's called the Basilica di San Francesco di Assisi. And that's the Basilica of St. Francis. And it's, as you could see, it's a spectacular looking church. And you walk up that incline to get to the main entrance to the church. And the interior, well, this is another view of it from a different angle. Let me make that larger because I had to take this off the internet. We never looked at it from this view when we were there, but you could see that this is another view of it. And that's yet another one, a close-up of it. And you could see that it's quite spectacular. And it's known for its interior. And you can see that the interior is stunning. Look at that. Pretty amazing. It's actually known for this. This is what it's known for. There are two segments. There's the upper portion of the basilica and the lower portion, built at two different times. And one of them was was painted, frescoes were painted by Giotto. And you could see that this is beautiful. And you know, his most famous piece of work is, of course, the Scrovegni Chapel in Padova, but he's known for this as well. So this is one of Giotto's masterpieces. You're not supposed to take pictures, but we did anyway. Could not do it. And then we went out and walked around the town, and mostly we're taking pictures of the landscape around the town of Assisi. And now we come to Spello. Spello is another town, hill town in Umbria. And for this one, we actually have a video. This is a little goofy. I'm a little goofy in this one, but I give you a little tour of what it's like walking around the town of Spello. So, Ellen, when you're ready.
You're on.
Hello from Spello. We spent the day driving to Spoleto, where it was
Let's
raining.
walk after we do this.
What?
Let's walk.
Oh, and then we came to Spello. We're here. It's the weather is kind of lousy. It just cleared up recently. While we were eating lunch, we had a great lunch in a nice osteria. And Laura is now taking a picture of me in front of a pretty beautiful view, I believe, which you're now taking a look at. This is a tiny hill town in Umbria, about 5 miles south of Assisi, which is the major town in the area, not far from Perugia. And this is, I think we are not only the only Americans in this town, but I think we're the only people in this town. There are some beautiful stone edifices here. We're now headed down the hill. We're going to walk around the town for the next couple of hours, maybe scope out a place for dinner. And tomorrow we head for Assisi, where we're going to take a look at the famous church. And then we go on to the college town of Urbino. We are now walking down this hill in Spello, and you see this magnificent valley spread out before us with a beautiful mountain, and you can see that the clouds are kind of lingering over the hills, making it look a little bleak, but this is great compared to the way it was 2 hours ago. So this is good. We have a very nice hotel. It's a kind of a cute hotel. Again, I think we're the only people in the hotel. And
Let's just get a close-up of the view.
watch out, get out of the way. There's cars all over the place here in Italy, and ooh, look at that. Look at that. To your left.
Oh, look at that.
I want to figure out where we are now by using my trusty map.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of what Spello looks like and what the countryside around it looks like. It's a, you know, it's a pretty town. Incidentally, we were there in January. That's why, I mean, we went to Perugia and Orvieto on that first trip with, you know, Citta della Pieve in April, but this was January, and it was really cold. It was not only cold, and there's positives and negatives about traveling around Italy in the dead of winter. One of them is that, you know, the positive is that there are no tourists. You're literally, excuse me, sorry. You're literally the only people in town, so that's like a great feeling. And you go into restaurants, and there's, you know, you get great service. The bad thing is that you freeze. I mean, it's really cold and nasty. You can get nasty weather. But this is that shot you saw from the video. This was a beautiful, beautiful picture over here with the man walking up the street. And these are some of the rooftops. There's a tower over there in the distance. It's a chimney on top of a house. And then we came to the town of Todi, We eventually wound up in Todi on a different trip. That was on this trip, which I believe was the year 2007, the winter of 2007 in January. And Todi is a very nice town. Again, we didn't take many pictures. In those days we weren't taking a lot of pictures, and certainly not digitals. We were only taking, regular pictures because we had just gotten the digital camera in those early days. So, and the streets are beautiful. This is a similar street to the one that you just saw where that man was walking up it, but these are what the streets look like, and they're pretty incredible. And that's what the countryside around Todi looks like. I'm glad I went to Todi. We had a lovely dinner with some people there that we met, and it was very nice. And this is the countryside around Todi. I don't think it's quite as stunning looking as Tuscany, but it's pretty beautiful, as you could see. And one final town, and this is a town that's not in Umbria. It's in Marche, and it's the town of Urbino. And I have a little introduction here. Laura and I were supposed to stay at a hotel, and we switched. And this is I was very disgusted when I did this video because we were staying in a beautiful hotel, and we had to switch. And this is my story. So when you're ready, Alan.
Sitting in front of the hotel we should have been in, the Hotel Boncante. But they emailed me that they no longer are available because there's water damage. Anyway, we're in a different hotel. We're in Urbino, and this is the view that we should have had from our hotel window, but now we have the view of the parking lot at the other hotel. So I want my money back. That's all I have to say.
It's beautiful.
When I make I should hesitate and let you do all that work to get back. When I make a hotel reservation, I don't take anything for granted. I want to make it very far in advance because it's important to me to get a hotel with a great view. And I picked this hotel, and I picked the balcony. It was going to be January, so we weren't going to sit on the balcony, but at least we get this beautiful view from the room. And then they emailed me en route to the hotel, like 2 days before, and said that there's water damage and they can't put us up in the hotel because it's closed, so we're staying at a different place. And as I said in the video, we wound up staying at a hotel with a view of the parking lot instead of this stunning view. This is another view of what we would have had in the area around Urbino. We didn't take many pictures inside Urbino. There are a couple coming up, but the countryside around Urbino is beautiful. And it's the steepest town I've ever been in, except maybe Montepulciano in Tuscany. Like, we were really exhausted walking around this town. But we had one of the best meals I've ever had in Italy. And you could see that we had everything. We had 2 pasta dishes, plus we had a pizza dish, as you could see in the front there, because everything looked so good, we just ordered everything on the menu. And it was a delicious meal, if I remember correctly. This is me standing in the piazza with the palazzo on the left side. This is the palazzo that a person lived in by the name of Federico di Montefeltro. And he was a condottiere, which is a mercenary, and he made war and was paid for taking his troops and fighting in wars that other city-states were involved in. And he's a very famous man who lived between 1444 and 1482. And he actually had this very lavish royal court, and a very famous book was written with relation to the court of Federico de Montefeltro, and that was a book written by Baldassare, and the name of the book is The Book of the Courtier. Baldassare Castiglione wrote a book called The Book of the Courtier, which is kind of a guidebook for the quote-unquote modern gentleman of the 16th century. The modern gentleman was someone who traveled from town to town. He had very proper manners, spoke many languages, knew poetry, knew humanism, and Federico had him as a friend, and he lived in that palace. And that's a picture of Laura in that piazza, but slightly off to the right of that. And that's one last view of the town around it. And that comes to the end of the show. And this is the next show we're doing. It's going to be a show on one of the really beautiful towns in Alto Lazio. And Rick Hurst will be with me on that show doing the narration of some of the spectacular site and history of it. And it's right near where he lives in Roccavecce. So that's coming next week. And then we have two shows on the towers of Italy. I do a show on some famous towers, and then Frank Palaia comes back with me, and we have some good stuff coming up for you in the future. So for tonight, I'd like you to thank you for watching, and buonanotte e buona fortuna.